Welcome to Real Estate Real World, where we talk to the movers, shakers, and leaders that are getting it done right now in the real estate industry and beyond. Your host is Marguerite Crespillo, and she started this podcast simply to talk to cool people about what's really happening in this crazy roller coaster ride of real estate. Be sure to subscribe on iTunes and stay up to date on the newest stuff by adding yourself to the list at www.realestaterealworld.com. Now your host, Marguerite Crespillo.
Hello, everybody. It's Marguerite Crespillo, and I'm so glad to be here today to give you another fabulous episode of Real Estate Real World, where we get to talk to all of the amazing people out there, the movers and the shakers who are really actively involved in doing work in the real estate space. So today we have a very special guest, Mark Walker. Hi, Mark.
Hey there.
Is joining us today from Luxmana Investments, LLC. Mark is a founder of Luxmana Investments, which focuses on residential and multifamily investments. Mark was able to go from being a part-time investor with a full-time job in high tech to someone who quit the corporate rat race in pursuit of his passion and now thrives as a multifamily investor. So welcome to the show, Mark.
Well, thank you so much. I'm really happy and honored to be here. Thank you.
So where are you located at?
I'm out here in Colorado. I live in Longmont, technically, but that's near Boulder. Everyone knows where Boulder's at.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Beautiful out there. Well, I live in Northern California, kind of on the way to Tahoe, so we have a little bit of similar landscape, a little bit out there, not quite the same. We have a lot of snow this year, I'll tell you that.
Well, that's nice. You must have taken it from us, because I wouldn't say it was crazy this year. But
oh, my goodness. A friend of mine runs the training division at Mount Rose Ski Resort. And she showed me a picture where they had literally 50 feet of snow at the entrance. 50 feet. Like I can't visualize 50 feet. But when you see it, it's like taller than like a 3-story building, I think. I don't know. It was crazy.
Yeah, that's a lot of snow. Wow.
Yeah, insane. So we have a lot of snow this year. So anyway, so tell us, how did you decide you wanted to invest in real estate? Give us a little background on you, a little history.
Oh, sure. Yeah. I read that book, Rich Dad, Poor Dad, in 2003. And I think 80% of the people that I talk to, at least, that are real estate investors, they have read that book and they were inspired by it. Yeah. And many of us, that's how we got started. I loved that book not only because of it changed the way I thought about money, but and it does have a real estate slant, but it also is about entrepreneurism, and I've always kind of had that little seed, deep inside of me, and I'd say that it definitely caused that to start to grow as well. And so then in 2004, my wife and we bought our first rental property in South Denver, and that's really what started it. We owned that property for about a year or two, and we self-managed that property. And I'll tell you, there's the reason we self-managed was because we wanted to get that experience. We figured it might help us interface with a professional property management company a little better in the future. You know what the key learning was? I never want to manage my own property again.
I don't blame you one bit. I don't blame you at all.
Yeah, it
Figure out your strength, right?
Exactly. And, there's some people that are really good at that. I know some people that have always self-managed and they're wildly successful at it and really good at it, but it just has never been me. And so, but it was a good experience. But after that, we used professional management for everything after that. We really owned that property for about a year or two. And then we ended up sitting the next few years out. And that was kind of a blessing in disguise because we know what happened.
Exactly.
We weren't in anything when the market crash or the financial collapse happened. So we were in a really good spot. In 2010, I started networking again, and I met a general contractor that we ended up partnering to do a couple of scrapes together in real trendy parts of Denver. And when I say scrape, I mean that we bought an old single-family home. We scraped that house to the ground, and in its place, we raised up a residential duplex on each lot that was 3 stories. and we did a party well agreement. And what that enabled us to do was deed each side of that duplex separately and sell each side off. And each of those projects, we did 2 of them. They took about 12 to 16 months, for each of the projects. And as the money started to come back out from those projects, that's when I started Luxmana Investments, because I knew I wanted to start building my mailbox money again with that goal that I had of escaping the rat race, of leaving my corporate job and living off of my passive income. And so that's really what started it and how Luxmana came to be.
That's interesting, and yes, I agree. I think most of us have all read, Rich Dad, Poor Dad, which was a brilliant book. And the game was even better. I mean, I sat and played that game with my kids, and my youngest son now is 20, and he's very much an entrepreneur,
That's
very
fantastic.
entrepreneurial spirit. But even I learned a ton in that game. I used to play Monopoly with my sons too, and they would always get so irritated. They're like, "You always win at Monopoly." I said, "Well, I got a little bit of experience." It's like
Sure.
Monopoly was the original cash flow game, right? Like, I mean,
That's
that was
right.
truly for any of us who spent any time playing hours and hours of Monopoly.
That's
But
right.
the market you certainly got in and out at the right time. I mean, 2020 hindsight, I wish, we had all known. And what's funny is when you do know that, you look back, you're like, I don't know that any of us were any smarter than anyone else. It's just like I remember the day, for me, it was August 2005 because I sell residential real estate. I put a house on the market, and 2 weeks later it was still on the market. And I remember thinking, that's weird. I think the winds have shifted. Obviously I had no idea to the capacity that it would shift, but pretty powerful when you look back at that and you're like, oh, how can I listen to that voice more? We don't listen to it enough.
Right. And now we know what it looks like too. You mentioned that as a, real estate agent, it was as the traffic started to slow down, the marketing time took longer. For me, if and when, I mean, the market's still really hot right now, at least here in
Yeah.
Colorado, but if and when I start to see vacancy rates increase significantly, that'll probably be a major signal to me that the tides are starting to change again. So
Well, interesting about what's going on out here, and I'm assuming it might be similar in your market, is things have not slowed down. Prices have gone crazy, which everyone's kind of nervous because the prices are back to where they were about 2005, 6, right? So people all
hmm
think there's going to be something going on. But honestly, the hardest thing to find right now is a rental. Like if
yeah,
you want to just rent I get people ask me almost every single day, "Hey, do you know of any rentals?" Like they're getting harder and harder and harder to find. And so that kind of ties into what you have done with a lot of these multifamily. Are you seeing much in the way of vacancies?
right now the market remains pretty strong, both for the sales side of it as well as the rents. It's funny in Colorado. I escaped the rat race in January of 2015. And when I left, I remember it was that springtime that I sat down with my management company and we kind of looked at where rents were going. And I just remember saying to them very vividly, I can't believe that unit would get that much rent. There's just no way it will possibly go any higher than that. Well, 2016 has come and gone now. And again, they raised rents again, like double digits, in terms of percentages, and again, I just found myself saying, I can't believe that unit is getting that much rent. There's just no way it's going to go any higher.
Yeah.
But here in Colorado, what I have noticed, and this is not a hard data point, this is just something that Mark Walker's noticed in his portfolios. I noticed that last year here in Colorado, we have a lot more of the leases. People are coming in with roommates now, and that's because I don't think they'd
They can't afford
qualify
it.
without a roommate. Yeah.
So I have a question for you, actually. Are you seeing or doing anything with Airbnb?
I'm not. There's been a lot of that a lot of people that have done that here in Colorado, and even some of the local laws and stuff like that. The city statutes and stuff like that have changed. I'm reading between the lines, but it seems like maybe there's been a lot of lobbying by some of the large hotel chains and stuff like that, because Airbnb has not been subject to some of the same, like occupancy taxes and stuff like that the hotels are subject to, and so they've made some changes to that, and they put some pretty strict rules around that in the Denver area, and I don't know all of them, in great detail. But I think you can only do it if it's like your personal residence, and you can only do it for a month out of the year. There's just different rules around it that they're really trying to shut that down here in Colorado.
Yeah, I was just curious how that's starting to affect some of because I know, for example, for us, we have a guest house on our property, and we had it rented out just on a regular basis, and the tenant moved out, and we're like, oh, we're just gonna see how Airbnb works out, because I can block out I can block out when I have family and friends. I can, book it on my time. And literally within 30 minutes, I had 3 people book it. So I was just curious
Wow.
how that's going to start affecting multifamily, and we're going down a
Yeah.
rabbit hole, so we don't need to talk about that. But I was just curious if you're seeing that impact or effect. And so you went from building a couple duplexes effectively and
hmm
dividing those up. And then what happened?
Well, so then what I wanted to do, so in 2011, as the money started to come out from those investments, I knew again that my goal was to escape the rat race. So I had to start building my passive income again. And doing development deals was a lot of fun. I loved playing with Legos as a kid. I
Yeah.
loved to build things, and
Yeah.
create value and things like that. And so doing those development deals was a lot of fun, but it obviously generates a lot of cash. And you obviously get the best tax benefits and stuff like that from having passive income. Not to mention, I wanted to be able to quit my job someday. So I started buying rental properties with my cash, and of course, it was a great time. I mean, the the market was bottomed out from the
2010
financial
was the bottom.
crisis.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it was really great timing. And between 2011 and 2014, I bought a modest-sized portfolio of mostly single family. In late 2013, December 2013, I bought my first apartment complex. It was a 12 unit apartment complex. And the plan with that one was to originally hold that for about 10 years. I bought it in an area that was starting to see some development and investment from, larger institutions and stuff like that. And I thought, this is probably a 10-year hold. Well, fast forward now to January 2015. I have enough passive income. I was able to leave my corporate job.
Nice.
And shortly after leaving, someone comes along and makes an off-market offer on that 12-unit apartment complex that I was planning on holding for 10 years. So this is about a year and 3 months in. I decide to sell the 12-unit apartment complex, and had a very, very nice return on that. And then I ended up using that to 1031 into a 64 unit apartment complex in Texas.
Oh my.
And I'll tell you, the 1031 was really interesting because, as you know, there's deadlines around identifying.
Yeah.
And most importantly, you need to close within 180 days.
Right.
Otherwise, you can't defer the taxes.
Right.
I closed on day 180.
Oh,
I mean,
that must have been a bit stressful.
yeah,
Yeah.
it was very stressful. It was by the skin of my teeth. So many things, popped up during the whole, process of, being under contract, doing the due diligence and getting to closing. But, it's really stresses the importance of having the right team of people behind you that are there to, help ensure, your collective success. And we got it done. But that was really exciting. And, you know, uh, I have not looked back. I have loved being free from the rat race. And as we talk about, setting up my journey has been a lot like playing that game cash flow, or even playing Monopoly, right? I turned my 4 houses into a big hotel, right? Or in this case, a multifamily property. And I started small. I started doing small deals like you would in cash flow. And I just gradually, built my portfolio to a point where I was able to start doing larger deals. And so even today, as my journey continues, I just strive to do larger and larger deals.
How how was it going from, because it sounds like all your original investment properties were there in Colorado near where you lived, right? So you kind of
Hmm.
knew that area and knew that market.
Right.
And then where in Texas did you buy?
I bought in Irving.
Okay.
It's actually in Dallas County,
Yeah,
a
outside of
suburb
Dallas.
of
Yeah.
Dallas. Yeah.
So how did you go from Colorado to Texas? And was that a
Yeah.
scary jump?
It probably wasn't as scary as it could have been. I had a great advantage in the sense that when I left my corporate job, I have a cousin who's been a 30-year veteran in multifamily. He's a successful investor. He's been a broker, and he also owns a property management company. And he had moved up to Colorado maybe back in like the 2010 or 2011 timeframe. And so we had every once in a while we'd get together and have lunch, like maybe every 6 months, and we'd talk about what we were working on. I'd come and I'd talk about my residential stuff. He'd tell me what was going on with his multifamily stuff, and we'd always swap notes. And one day I just he'd called me, and I mentioned, yeah, I'm gonna jump out of the corporate job. I'm gonna jump the rat race. And he says, well, if you want, you can come job shadow me.
Oh, wow. What a great
And
opportunity.
it was, and up until that point, I have to admit, I hadn't even considered it. It's just, by happenstance that, one thing leads to another. And so when I left my job, I just went and I sat in his office and I watched for a few months. And, I helped him out at the same time. And I learned how the really big stuff goes down. I mean, he won't touch anything less than about 150 units. And most of his transactions are 200 300 units at a time. And so it was, and he owns the management company in Texas. And
Nice.
so I, through that, relationship and sitting in the office and seeing, things that were going on with his division down in Texas, that's how I found out about the property in Irving. And
Oh,
that's what
okay.
led to that. Yeah.
It's so funny. I was in San Diego last week and I was down in Coronado Island. And
Hmm.
I remember looking across the bay at all the huge buildings in San Diego. And I was sitting out there and I was like, who owns that building? Like when you look at these
Right.
skyscrapers that are, 40 stories or 100 stories high, and you think, who
Right.
owns that building? you know and
Yeah.
how did they get there? And it's really baby steps, like you said, right? It's
Yes.
taken one little condo and then turning it into a single family and possibly a duplex, and right, baby steps.
Exactly, exactly. That has totally been my journey. And I wish too that I could say that I had this all planned out from the
Yeah.
beginning, back in 2003, but it wasn't like that at all. I mean, I always had a common goal. My goal was to escape the rat race and, live off of my passive income. So I've always kind of had that as my guide, my guiding light, right? But I wish I could say I had a plan step by step on how I was going to get there, but it wasn't. Instead, what I just did is I just took action. I focused on learning, and I always say never stop learning. Learning leads to action, and action leads to success, right?
Yeah.
And that is just kind of my guiding principle the whole time. And one thing led to another. And I met this person who introduced me to this person. And because of that, I started thinking about something or inquiring about something that led me to, make one other type of investment or whatever. That's literally, been, it's just been, been that.
So what would you say has been your biggest mistake you've made?
Oh, I love that question. Boy, have I got a doozy for you. So remember me saying that I owned that duplex in South Denver for a year or two,
Yeah.
and then I sat out the next few years. Well, there's a reason that I sat out the next few years. I sold that duplex in South Denver with the intent to 1031 exchange it into something else. I had met a developer that had this really great concept. They would go in and they would develop an entire community of duplexes, and they would sell off each individual duplex to individual investors. They also had a division that did property management. They had a division that specialized in non-owner occupied financing, another division that was a 1031 intermediary. They had the whole solution.
Complete package.
Complete package. It would have been great if the people involved were only honest. So I had 1031'd that money, and I used their division as the intermediary. And long story short, I ended up testifying to the grand jury to help get the indictment.
Oh, my goodness.
I was the second guy they put on the stand at the official trial. And that guy, the head guy, was sentenced 130 years.
Oh,
and
goodness.
It was the largest prison sentence ever divvied out in the state of Colorado to that point for fraud. So it wasn't just me. It was a very large number of people that were taken. And fortunately, I did not invest more than I could afford to lose. But, when I look back on that, I call that my PhD in real estate.
Yeah.
I did lose, some money, and I walked away with a ton of learnings, specifically around due diligence. If you are ever, my advice to people is that if you are ever looking to invest money with someone or partner with someone that you have just met, hopefully that person's either been introduced to you by someone that you really trust and that has done business with them already. And I really encourage people to just do a quick background check. No credible person is going to mind if you do a background check.
It's interesting that, you say that because, of course, everybody wants to be where you are now, right? So we all get to see that and how hard can it be? And in many ways, we make it sound somewhat easy, although it's not, right? So, so we've all had that situation where we're up at 1 a.m. and we see those famous infomercials, right? That tell us how we can make $1 bazillion and, do nothing. And then as a real estate professional, I get those calls a lot of times, right? From somebody who, was up at 1 a.m. watching that infomercial and says, I want to buy an investment property now, and how can I do it with no money down? And you go find it for me and you do all the work for me and let me just roll in the dough. And so I have to have the other end of that conversation where, okay, that's not necessarily reality, right? And you don't want to lose more than you can afford to lose. And people just don't think that they're going to lose. And tragically, we saw that happen in this last, downturn of what happened in the market. Have you seen that movie Big Short?
I have. Wow. That was eye-opening. Isn't that crazy?
Oh, my goodness. I watched that movie. I was actually in Chicago a couple weeks ago, and I watched it on the plane coming home. And the whole time, I was, mesmerized by that. Because I lived that. I mean, I was, I sold a lot of REOs during that time, too. So I was in the middle of that crisis. But anyway, I digress. But the reality is that you do have to do your due diligence. I mean, but the other end, you said you got a PhD, and I love that because, honestly, unfortunately, most of us don't learn until we've made a huge, huge mistake that cost us something. Whether it was money, time, resources, people we care about, is how we learn. But so, how did you really overcome that? How did you not get afraid to do it again?
Well, you actually just said the key word, afraid or fear, right? So I'll admit that I struggled with fear a lot after that. So that was 2005, 2006-ish that all that stuff went down. And I sat out the next few years. Now, it was a blessing in disguise that I ended up sitting out. But I'll tell you, I would analyze properties, and I would always find some reason to talk myself out of it, why it didn't make any sense at all. And really at the end of the day, it was because I was afraid, right? So that was something that I had to overcome. And it wasn't until 2010ish that I, really started to network again and, invest again. But that was definitely the biggest challenge that I think I had to overcome. And I'll give a lot of credit to my wife, because she was with me that entire time, and she's always been an encouragement. And you know, uh, I wouldn't say that she wasn't necessarily the one saying, "Hey, you got to jump back in the game" or anything like that. But when I was ready to jump back into the game, she was behind me 100%, and even alongside me as I was continuing to learn and stuff like that. So, that was huge.
So when you signed on that next deal after that, did you have like a little mini panic attack for a moment?
I don't really remember. So, I mean,
Yeah.
the fact that I can't remember, I'm sure there was stress, absolutely.
Yeah.
And it's all relative too, because relative to today, the size of the deals, are so different. But yeah, I'm sure there, was that little bit of anxiety thinking, okay, here we
Yeah, no
go.
kidding. Here we go. So
But
so tell me what's next for you? Like what's next on the horizon? You own this 16 unit building in Texas, you said?
64.
64. Oh, way bigger. Yeah.
Yeah. It's just to gradually continue to do larger and larger deals. And I'll say
Hmm.
that there are some people out there that have a much more full pipeline than I do. I definitely feel very blessed in the sense that, I'm not desperate for a deal.
Right.
I have acquisition criteria. I know what a good deal looks like. More importantly, I know what my formula is for unlocking value, right? I know I can look at a property and I can determine pretty quickly whether or not there's some value there that I can unlock, right? But at the same time, it's really competitive right now. The market's a little hot. If the right deal comes along, I will absolutely do it. I'm looking for bigger deals, something closer to 100 units, um, give or take. But, I might have that deal right now. About this close to, getting a agreed to LOI. But, I don't have to have a deal,
Right.
and that's a good feeling, right? Especially in a market like this. And you mentioned it too. This is a tough business. You it's not necessarily like those infomercials,
Right.
that we see. And I just you know I'm very cautious in a time like this right now, just given the strength of the market and stuff like that. The number of people that I see jumping into the market and what I see them paying for it.
Yeah.
I get knocked out by a lot of people that are willing to pay more. And that means that, they either have a different formula for success than I do. They have a different way of unlocking value than the way I'm looking at it, or maybe they are just paying too much. So,
Right.
only time will tell.
So
So,
now that you're out of the rat race and your day-to-day job, so to speak,
mhm.
what do you do all day? What do you do with
Oh,
your time?
I have a 5-year-old daughter,
Oh, there you
and
go.
it is such a wonderful time. She thinks I walk on water, which is amazing,
Kids are the
but
best.
they are, and she's got her daddy wrapped around her little finger, which is really cool. So I spend a lot of time with her. I still, I mean, I spend, a few hours a week working on stuff. I still analyze a lot of deals. Like I said, my pipeline is not as full as it could be, but I'm moving at, my own pace, and I'm enjoying life, and so it's good. Life is pretty laid back, and um, it's just nice, setting my own schedule. And like I said, if I find a deal, that's great, because I do get bored a little bit sometimes. But at the same time too, um, I don't have to do a deal. I can just enjoy that time with my family and my daughter. And
My friend Dean Jackson says he knows when he's successful when he doesn't ever look at his watch.
there you go.
He doesn't have an alarm clock, right? He doesn't need to know he doesn't have anywhere to be, right? He can just get up and go and do as he wants to every day, which I think is a dream of most people.
I do. I like that a lot. And I think I'm like that uptight type person too. So that makes me think. I think I need to get there still.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah.
Um,
Relax a little bit, right?
yeah,
Life's
exactly.
what happens when we're busy planning is one
That's
of my
right.
favorite
That's
sentences.
right. I like that a
Well,
lot.
as we wrap up today, I know that you have a free gift for us, and for our
Yeah.
listeners. So why don't you tell us a little bit about that?
Sure. I have a free gift on my website that you can go grab. It's called 10 Not So Obvious Ways to Boost Your Multifamily Property NOI.
Okay.
And whether or not you are a multifamily investor today or someday aspire to be, there's even some things in here that you might even be able to apply to, single family homes as well. But one of the things I love about multifamily is the value add component, or what we sometimes refer to as forced appreciation. A commercial property like that is valued based on its income. So if you're able to raise the income, the net operating income of a property, then that property is going to be worth more. And I talk more about that in this guide that I've written. But I share 10 things that I've kind of learned along the way. They're less than obvious, but ways where you can increase your income and decrease your expenses, and drive the value of your property. So you can get that by going to www.luxmana.com/real world.
Awesome. That's fantastic. And we'll be sure to have a link to that as well on our website at realestaterealworld.com and in the show notes for the podcast here. Well, thank you so much, Mark, for spending some time with us today. Delightful conversation and fascinating. I wish you a ton of success and hopefully fewer and fewer mistakes, right? Like all of us make.
That's right. That's right. Well, thank you so much. It was really an honor to be here, and I really enjoyed it. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you. All right, everybody, that wraps up another great episode of Real Estate Real World. Please head on over to iTunes and subscribe. And of course, we love your great reviews. They help boost our ratings up on the show. So take a moment and give us a great review and let us know of any other guests you would love to hear on Real Estate Real World. Thank you so much, everybody, for joining us today. Go out and make it a great day.
Thank you for joining us today on Real Estate Real World, where we talk with masters and leaders in real estate and beyond on how we can raise the bar in our industry. Please subscribe over on iTunes. And while you're there, be sure to give us a review. Your reviews encourage us and help others find our podcast. For show notes and hot topics on what's going on right now in our real estate industry, hop on over to www.realestaterealworld.com and add your name to our email. Thanks again for listening. And go out there, be a part of the elite masterclass in raising the bar on the real estate industry.